opinion from the heart of Westminster. And time now for our daily debate. Did the Commons Speaker John Bercow overstep the mark when he said he'd refused to invite President Trump to Westminster? Joining me now are the Conservative MP John Whittingdale and Labour's Stephen Kinnock. So what do you think?
No, I thought it was a great performance by John yesterday.
It was a great performance. Was it right, though?
Yeah, I think it was right as well. But it had, of course, he set the case out very clearly, where he said that this is not a right. It is something that has to be earned. And he was speaking for the Mother of Parliaments when he said somebody that is sexist, racist, and has no respect for an independent judiciary and equality before the law has not earned the right to come and speak and to have that great honour of Westminster Hall or indeed the Royal Gallery. Who knows, things may turn around and Mr. Trump may well at some point come to earn that right, but it's not something he's entitled to have.
Well, it was a performance. It was John Bercow playing to the gallery, and I think it was damaging to the national interest, and I think it's regrettable that he did it. I think, firstly, we have a history of having people on state visits and, indeed, speaking in Parliament who we do not necessarily agree with. Donald Trump is the elected leader of our closest ally. He leads a country which has a fine tradition of democracy, of the rule of law, of respect for rights, which an awful lot of the countries whose leaders have been to Westminster do not have.
But as Ms. Kinnock just said, he did make it clear he was only talking about the parliamentary protocol. He wasn't talking about the rights and wrongs of the state visit. And the fact is, there is an early day motion down at the moment, which I think nearly 200 MPs have signed on this issue. So at some point, the Speaker would have been drawn in.
Well, the Speaker and the other authorities, I believe the Lord Chancellor and the Lord Speaker, have to formally make a decision. But I think normally they would keep out, and if the government requested it, I would expect them to accept that this is an invitation on behalf of the government. But if he really did feel so strongly, then actually what would be much better is for him to have a quiet word with the Prime Minister and say, look, I don't want to cause embarrassment to the government or to President Trump, and therefore it would be better if you didn't suggest that he did speak in Parliament. Instead, he did a typical playing to the gallery for as much publicity as possible, and in doing so undoubtedly caused deep embarrassment.
It hadn't actually been raised by Trump or by Mrs. May that he might address Parliament. So.
No, but it was raised in this early day motion, and my colleague Stephen Doughty raised as a point of order. The Speaker, therefore, had to comment, and I think we have to. I sort of think about the words of Brendan Cox that 2016 was a wake-up call. And, I know we can have arguments about the President of China being there or the Emir of Kuwait or whoever it might be, but perhaps 2016 was the year where we said, actually, there are values that we hold dear, values that we've cherished since the Second World War, the creation of the post-war liberal order, and we have a president now who is ripping those values up. And as the representative of the mother of all parliaments, John Bercow rightly said, we've got to draw a line in the sand somewhere, and this is where I am drawing that line.
Should MPs just say, look, Donald Trump, you're president, you're a great man, even if they profoundly disagree, as Stephen Kinnock obviously does, and as John Bercow does, with Donald Trump's worldview?
Well, I think actually having somebody come to Westminster doesn't mean you endorse everything that they've ever said, and that clearly is not the case with a number of people who have come and spoken in Parliament. But Stephen talks about Parliament or England being the mother of parliaments, and that is absolutely true. But the fundamental principle of Parliament is democracy, and we have to recognise that Donald Trump is the democratically elected leader of America, whereas a lot of the other people who've come have not been democratically elected.
But look how long it took for Reagan, Clinton, Obama didn't get his time until for 6 years. Why are we desperately, quite frankly, brown-nosing a president who has done absolutely nothing to earn this honour? It's something, as John Bercow rightly said yesterday, it's an earned honour, not an entitlement. He would be standing on the shoulders of giants, quite frankly, people that he's not fit to tie the shoelaces of, people like Nelson Mandela standing there in Westminster Hall. I think it would demean the value of having that honour. Let's wait for Donald Trump to really see what kind of president he's going to be. If things turn around, if things change, absolutely we should have him here. But as things stand, he does not have that right.
Is that the problem that Theresa May rushed into it? Really?
Well, John Bercow said this wasn't about the issue of his being invited on a state visit. It is a matter for the government when he is invited. He is now
Do you
our
think
closest.
you're not in the government anymore? Do you think it was too hasty?
No, because actually now is a time when it's very important, firstly, that we build strong relations. We can influence him. There are some things that Donald Trump has said which I profoundly disagree with, particularly his doubt about NATO and about his admiration for Putin. But those are areas where we can actually influence him. And already, following Theresa May's visit to Washington, he came out and said, well, actually, he did see value in NATO, which was a big step forward. And the truth is, we want to build strong relations with countries around the world, particularly as we leave the European Union, and America will be, and always has been, our strongest ally.
I think that in the wake of Brexit, what we have here is a real risk of the United Kingdom looking both isolated and desperate. And I think that what John Bercow did yesterday was send a very clear message to our government, which was that just because of what's happened with Brexit, it doesn't mean that we're now going to be kowtowing around the world, sacrificing the values that we've cherished and held dear for decades because we are desperate. And so I think it was actually a very smart diplomatic move to set out our values as a country and say we recognise the risk of looking increasingly isolated. Let's not let's not allow that to push us into taking hasty, ill-advised decisions.
Which is that is drawing the Speaker into politics. It is a political statement to send a message to the government, and that is not what the Speaker is there for. And yesterday, you will have seen, the Speaker was cheered by SNP members, by Labour members, and he was heard in silence on the government benches. And that is not a good thing when the Speaker is seen to be so clearly siding with one side of the House rather than the other.
Democracy, equality, non-racism, non-sexism, these are not political issues. These are values that transcend our politics.
Isn't there a possibility, though, that at a practical level this is an own goal? Because the joint address to Parliament had not been mentioned by either side before. It has now been mentioned by the Speaker, and so if it doesn't go ahead, it will inevitably be read as a snub or two fingers up to Donald Trump, which sort of means that the authorities have got to offer it now when they didn't before.
Well, my understanding, he's been out saying, hasn't he, that he doesn't want one anyway, or he's briefing that he doesn't want one anyway, so that's fine. Then honours are even. We've set our case out very clearly. I think the fact that there's an early day motion, every MP has the right to sign it. As you say, almost 200 have signed it, so it's an issue out there. You can't just brush it away. It would be the elephant in the room.
I mean, are you perhaps sacrificing yourself for someone who doesn't want you to stand up for him, particularly if he doesn't want address to Parliament? He's not a great formal speaker.
I'm not entirely surprised that he should say that once the message has been given to him that the Speaker is not going to invite him. I don't think you should necessarily mean that he isn't offended or upset. And
yes, there is an element that actually Donald Trump's whole style is leader to leader. And actually, he's not bound by democratic institutions or mothers of Parliament.
Maybe he's not, and maybe he won't be upset. But that, in a way, is not the point. I think that it was offensive, potentially, to him to make it so clearly an attack on him personally, and it drew the Speaker into politics. And I just don't think that was a sensible move.
If he goes around being offensive, should we be offensive back?
I think it's about standing true and holding to values which transcend politics. And let's not forget that John Bercow is a Tory. So, this is about somebody who's saying he doesn't like the direction that is being taken by a particular leader, and he is the gatekeeper of the mother of all parliaments. And quite frankly, Mr. Trump is not the right person to have that honour at this time.
Is John Bercow a Tory?
Well, it's worth remembering that actually when he was elected by the Labour benches and the Liberal benches with virtually no Tories supporting him at all. He was once a Tory MP, but I think it's certainly the case he's moved a long way, and it is
in the right direction.
And it is important now, but he should not show any
both your parties didn't stand against him. I think UKIP were the only major parties.
Well, it is the convention is you don't challenge a sitting speaker. It's virtually unheard of.
Incidentally, Nigel Farage says he's out of order, for what that's worth.
Right, I'm sure John is. That'll be the sleepless nights for months for John on that, yes.
That's not the strongest argument in my support, I would say.
We will leave it there. Thank you very much indeed. This is All Out Politics. Coming up next, 25 years